Imagine a battle so vast, so brutal, and so devastating that it dwarfed every clash of swords and spears you've ever heard of. Bigger than anything from Rome, bigger than Napoleon, bigger than D-Day. Now imagine this. You've never heard of it. Over 2 million soldiers clashed. Hundreds of thousands died in a single, calculated massacre. And the war changed the course of an entire civilization. Yet almost no one in the West knows it ever happened. This is the story of the Battle of Changping, the bloodiest, most overlooked battle in human history. A battle fought not in Europe, but in ancient China, more than 2,000 years ago. Before China was ever unified, it was a fractured land, divided among rival kingdoms, locked in nearly constant war. This era, known as the Warring States period, lasted for more than 2 centuries, from the 5th to the 3rd century BCE. 7 major states dominated the landscape: Qin, Zhao, Chu, Han, Wei, Yan, and Qi. Each of these states was experimenting with new weapons, new strategies, and new systems of government. The battlefield became their laboratory. But one kingdom stood apart: the Qin. Its military was disciplined, relentless, and brutally efficient. Its bureaucracy was cold and methodical. The Qin didn't just want to win battles. They wanted something more permanent. They wanted to erase their enemies. By the mid-3rd century BCE, 2 superpowers had emerged from the chaos: the Qin, rising in the west, and the Zhao, dominant in the north. Both were wealthy, both were organized, and both were hungry for control. At the center of their rivalry was a strategically vital region known as Shandong. Mountainous, resource-rich, and perfectly positioned as a gateway into the heart of either kingdom. Whoever controlled Shandong could project power deep into enemy territory. In 262 BCE, the Qin moved first. They launched an invasion designed not just to seize land, but to draw Zhao into a war they could not escape. Zhao responded as expected. They mobilized their armies and marched to stop the Qin advance. What began as a regional conflict was about to spiral into one of the deadliest confrontations in human history. For nearly 2 years, the war around Shandong stalled. The armies of Qin and Zhao clashed again and again across hills and valleys, but neither side could deliver a decisive blow. Zhao's defense was led by a seasoned general named Lian Po. Unlike many commanders of his era, Lian Po refused to gamble on a single massive engagement. Instead, he fortified his positions. He avoided open battle, and he slowly drained the Qin advance through a grinding war of attrition. The strategy worked, but it also tested the patience of Zhao's rulers. Sensing opportunity, the Qin turned away from the battlefield and toward Zhao's capital. Through rumors, whispers, and deliberate misinformation, they spread a dangerous idea: that Lian Po was old, that he was timid, that he lacked the courage to finish the war. The whispers reached the Zhao court, and they worked. In Zhao's capital, the king made a fateful decision. Lian Po was recalled. In his place, a new commander was appointed: Zhao Kuo. Zhao Kuo was not inexperienced in theory. He had studied every known treatise on warfare. He could recite the strategies of ancient masters line by line. But he had never commanded an army in battle. Where Lian Po valued patience, Zhao Kuo valued decisiveness. Where Lian Po avoided risk, Zhao Kuo sought confrontation. Upon arriving at the front, Zhao Kuo dismantled the fortifications his predecessor had built. He abandoned the strategy of attrition, and he prepared his army for a direct engagement with the Qin. For the Qin command, it was the moment they had been waiting for. The trap was now set. Opposing Zhao Kuo was a very different kind of commander. His name was Bai Qi. Where Zhao Kuo trusted doctrine, Bai Qi trusted outcomes. He was calm, patient, and utterly indifferent to the cost of human life. Bai Qi did not intend to meet Zhao Kuo in a fair fight. Instead, he ordered his forces to withdraw, not in panic, but in perfect order. To Zhao Kuo, it appeared that the Qin lines were breaking. He saw weakness, he saw opportunity, and he advanced. What Zhao Kuo could not see was that the retreat was an illusion. As his army pushed forward, Qin forces moved silently around him, closing in from the flanks and sealing off the rear. The Zhao army had walked straight into a trap. The encirclement was complete. More than 400,000 Zhao soldiers were now trapped, cut off from supplies, cut off from reinforcements, and cut off from escape. What followed was not a battle, but a slow collapse. For 46 days, the Zhao army endured hunger, thirst, and disease. They slaughtered their horses for food. They stripped the land bare. And as desperation set in, discipline began to break down. Inside the encirclement, Zhao Kuo refused to accept defeat. He gathered a personal escort and led a final attempt to break through the Qin lines. It failed. Zhao Kuo was struck down by enemy fire and killed on the battlefield. With their commander dead, the remaining Zhao soldiers surrendered. To most commanders, surrender would have meant an end to the killing. To Bai Qi, it meant something very different. The surrendered Zhao soldiers were not seen as prisoners. They were seen as a future threat, and Bai Qi had no intention of allowing that threat to survive. He ordered the execution of every surrendered Zhao soldier. More than 400,000 men. They were bound in groups, marched away from the battlefield, and buried alive in mass graves. It was one of the largest mass executions in recorded history. The few who survived did so by chance, or because they were forced to witness what followed. The message was unmistakable. Resistance was no longer an option. The Battle of Changping was over. The Qin had achieved total victory. The Zhao state was shattered, its army destroyed, its population traumatized, and its ability to resist broken beyond repair. The psychological impact of Changping rippled across the warring states. Other kingdoms took notice. They had seen what happened to those who resisted Qin to the end. In the decades that followed, Qin advanced relentlessly. One by one, rival states fell, until in 221 BCE, Qin achieved what no one before them had accomplished. They unified China under a single ruler. That ruler was Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, and the world he created was forged in the blood spilled at Changping. So why have so few people outside of China ever heard of the Battle of Changping? How could a conflict involving more than 1 million soldiers and the deaths of hundreds of thousands become a historical footnote in much of the Western world? Part of the answer lies in how history is taught. Western education has long focused on Rome, Greece, Napoleon, and the world wars. Meanwhile, the vast and ancient history of East Asia is often condensed or overlooked entirely. In Western terms, Changping was larger than D-Day, deadlier than Gettysburg, and more consequential than many battles that dominate our textbooks. Yet its story remains largely unknown. And Changping is not unique. Across Asia, there are forgotten empires, lost cities, and buried truths that shape the world we live in today. The Battle of Changping is just one of them. This is the beginning of a series we call Buried Realms, Stories of Ancient Power, Forgotten Wars, and the history's time almost erased. If you want to uncover more of them, subscribe.